Hello, everyone. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Welcome to today's presentation. We have Todd Denkin, to Dank, joining us here today. This presentation is called Charting the Green Frontier, Building the First Publicly Traded Cannabis Company. So we'll learn a little bit more about that, going public in the cannabis industry. But first, I would like to welcome Todd and give you guys a little bit of information. Thank you for being here.
Oh, thank you for having me. Appreciate you.
Yeah, awesome. So a little bit about Todd. He started in the 80s as an on-air disc jockey and has worked his way through the entertainment industry as casting director, producer, editor, every other position, including voiceover and talent. So the reason why I wanted to give a little bit of that background is I'm always talking about how you can transition your current talents and your current whatever your interest and talents into the cannabis industry. There's a lot of opportunity here. So just as of recently, Todd, he's founded the National Marijuana News, which is an online media company that has been documenting the end of prohibition. He is also the on-air host, which his disc jockey background, and has interviewed hundreds of cannabis luminaries, scientists, patients, and CEOs with a firm belief in that good cannabis education creates good cannabis legislation. Using his experience in the digital media world, combined with experience in the cannabis space, Todd has also co-founded the SMUGGLEVERSE. We'll definitely get into that, which is the first digital dispensary of the metaverse, where you can currently buy digital cannabis in NFTs form, and soon release the Web3 game based on smuggling cannabis into the metaverse. So welcome, Tom. Thanks for being here.
Thank you again. Thanks for having me.
All right, so let's just get started with what's inspired you to venture into the cannabis industry back in 2009 when it was, taboo. Nobody was really talking about it. Nothing was going on. So what made you get started?
Yeah, it's an interesting story. I was just coming off of another gig in the technology space. We took a technology company public back in 2003. And, I've been working with that company since about 2000. So it was a long stretch and we had some pretty good success. So I had just exited that pubco, and my partner and I were really just looking for, the latest and greatest trends that were happening just in the world, right? Not specifically cannabis. Well, California medical cannabis had been legal for a little while, and the new trend being talked about back then was really growing your own cannabis. And we thought that was a really good green future, if you know what I mean, right? So we ended up buying a hydroponic company called Phototron, and we created Phototron Holdings and then took Phototron Holdings public. And at the time, there were only two other cannabis pubcos in the world. So we were one of the first, along with Cannabis Sciences and, of course, Medical Marijuana Inc. So again, we were just looking for a new trend and what was happening in the world, and cannabis was it.
Awesome. You mentioned hydroponic, and that's where most of my larger invoices for all of my clients go to, these hydroponic companies. Could you explain a little bit to our audience what that is? What
Sure.
those do?
Yeah, of course. So hydroponics is a way to grow something. It doesn't have to be cannabis, could be lettuce, could be cucumbers, could be whatever, without any soil. So it grows strictly in the water and some other kind of medium, just to keep the roots sturdy and gives them a place to grow. So it's growing without dirt, usually just in water, but sometimes there are some other mediums like sphagnum moss and stuff like that.
Okay, perfect. Yeah. Cool. Yeah, I was thinking about I need to get into that business after seeing the size of those invoices. Okay,
Yeah,
so what
right.
makes yeah. So let's talk about a little bit about your Digipath Labs, which is a Las Vegas facility, and it's the #1 cannabis testing facility in Nevada. What challenges did you overcome to achieve this status?
Well, certainly the challenges of regulation, over taxation, which we'll talk about a lot today. But honestly, the Nevada regulatory bodies that really started this back in the early days. So we've been at this for 10 years now. It first started with the Department of Health when we were just medical. Then when we also passed the laws on recreational cannabis, then the Department of Taxation took over, and that didn't really work out too well. So the government started what's called the CCB, or the Cannabis Control Bureau, which now runs is the regulatory body that controls, the cannabis industry. So, it was a big challenge getting approved for everything, from real estate to licensing and all of that stuff involved with, doing the right thing. And it's expensive, right? So you have to spend money in order to get all of that made. Plus, Nevada had a rule that you had to have $2 million in the bank and prove that you had 2 million in the bank just in order to apply for a license. So lots of challenges in the early days. But you know what? It's just like any other industry, right? You work the regulations to your advantage, right? You follow the rules and then you work the regulations to your advantage. But again, it is very difficult to run a cannabis business because of regulations and the scrutiny that we're under on a pretty much everyday basis.
Yeah, absolutely. I know back in the early days, I mean, that's the reason why they've started implementing the social equity license options and things like that. It was impossible to really get it open. Yeah. Okay. And then let's just talk a little. So when I first started in the industry, I spoke to a lot of people, and I mentioned, can you still hear me? I've lost the screen. Okay, perfect. So I mentioned to a lot of people, what are your passions? What are your expertise? There's so many different opportunities like photography, marketing, legal, accounting, you name it. These companies need it. So can you talk a little bit about how your diverse background in the entertainment industry contributed to your approach to building your cannabis business?
Yeah, absolutely. The entertainment industry is all about creative people, right? Working alongside some of the best and most talented creative people really helped me understand, the nuances of how to interact with people who are extremely passionate about their craft. And the cannabis industry is very similar in that over 90% of the folks that I know of anyway, in the industry are very passionate about the plants, whether it helped them or a family member heal from some debilitating disease, or maybe they used cannabis to be more creative or to raise some consciousness. It's one of the few industries that started in the black market, and through advocacy, and because of the medicinal nature of it, laws were passed and an industry was born. And it's really the passion of the people that really made this industry happen. And, what I found in the entertainment industry was, people have a passion for making movies or making art or making whatever it is that they're into, right? And I see a lot of similarities between, passionate workers.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you almost have to have that passion. It's so expensive, so highly regulated. Like you have to have something driving you to keep going.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, awesome. Okay. And then I feel like this is pretty similar.
Yeah, your video is frozen, but I can definitely still hear you.
Yeah, something is going on. Like I don't even see you at all. Like the whole screen is black. I'm afraid to refresh my screen, but I might need to.
Don't be afraid.
Okay, let me just refresh. Hopefully it doesn't lose everything.
Hi, everybody. I'm Todd Denkin. While Naomi refreshes her screen, I can entertain you perhaps if I was entertaining. But No, we'll just wait for Naomi.
Okay.
There she is.
That worked. Oh, perfect. I was panicking. I was like, where can't I see anything?
Oh, no.
Okay, we didn't lose anybody. We're all still here. Awesome. Thanks so
Well, I was
much.
entertaining them while you were gone, so.
Okay, yeah. I mean, you're the disc jockey. I brought the perfect, the perfect
Exactly.
guest.
Right.
Okay. So then, in your experience, like, what has been some of the most underrated skills that entrepreneurs entering this space can use in order to be successful?
Look, we all have skills in what we're currently doing, right? And if you're looking to get into the cannabis space, you have to find something you love and just go after it, right? It's really pretty simple, right? There's 5 different categories to be in the cannabis industry, right? Cultivation and production, which make all the products. There's the dispensaries and the lounges that sell the products, right? And then there's distribution that moves the product. So, what you really have to do is figure out where you fit best, what it is you can be passionate about, and just go for it. And like you were mentioning earlier, there's lots of ancillary businesses that have also sprung up over the years. Cannabis packaging, for instance, wasn't a thing, right? Until there was a need for cannabis packaging. Now you can package your products like Apple iPhones, right? And like you said, every cannabis business needs everything, right? I always say that if you take the sexy word cannabis out of the cannabis business, what do you have? Well, you have business, and business needs everything: marketing, sales, accounting, air conditioning, electricians, plumbers. All of those things can thrive because the cannabis industry needs all of that stuff. But even if you want to get specific, there's nutrient companies, there's pesticide companies, there's all kinds of things that are now serving the cannabis industry. And honestly, you just have to figure out what it is that you love to do and go for it.
Yeah, right. Absolutely. Like, we used a little with a saying that during the gold rush, not every miner struck gold, but they all needed a shovel. So
that's right.
If you're into making shovels, then you can make a pretty good business without even getting a cannabis license.
Yeah, picks and shovels are a big business.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, and let's talk a little bit about leadership. So on this live and on this platform, we have a lot of entrepreneurs, people who are smaller, looking to grow bigger businesses. And what we're learning is, beyond just understanding your craft and understanding how to debits and credits and how to make the widget, when you're scaling, you have to understand leadership. You're going to move into the C-suite, and you need to be able to lead a team that can support you. So what are some of the leadership skills that you learned during your early days of GROWLIFE that's helped you in subsequent ventures?
I would have to say that the most important thing is patience, right? You got to have patience because it takes time to build. It also costs twice as much and takes twice as long than anticipated, right? So you have to be patient. You have to have patience, right? Because from licensing to revenue to profit, it takes time, and you have to be diligent with your business. You have to show up every day. You have to do the work. You have to get the folks involved that are passionate like you are, that buy into your dream, right? And buy into what it is that your vision is. But the key, like I said, is patience. It is, as an entrepreneur, you always want to be aggressive, and you always want to go for things, and you don't want to take no for an answer. And those are all good qualities, right? But things don't always work out like you plan. In fact, they usually don't, right? And especially in the cannabis space, there's so many ups and downs, hills and valleys, and things to navigate that you really have to have patience and understand that it's just not going to happen overnight.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've definitely learned that when hiring and letting go of people, and you might feel like your instructions and your guidance is so clear, but you give the same instructions to like 10 different people and you'll get 10 different results. And it's like, people interpret things. So you have to, really understand and work with your team.
Yeah, from that perspective, you really have to figure out what motivates your specific team, right? and give them the job responsibilities that motivate them the best, right? So if somebody doesn't do something so great, you don't want to have them do it on a regular basis, right? You want to kind of move them into I always say you want to have the right people on the bus, but you got to have the right people in the right seat on the bus in order to thrive.
Right. Awesome. Okay, let's talk a little bit about your involvement in a publicly traded cannabis company. You're one of the pioneers. I know there are a couple that went public. I think that was the furthest thing from a lot of people's mind to go public. So I just like to understand, like, how did that happen? What did that look like?
Yeah, so how it happened was, like I mentioned earlier, I was coming off a big technology play that we started back in 2000. We had a streaming video technology company that we built up to 170 employees. We were spending $2 million a month. We were developing out really great technology. And all of a sudden, everything crashed, right? Right. The dot-com bubble burst, right? Then 9/11 happened, right? And it was very difficult to maneuver in those days. But we ended up going public after 9/11, and it worked out. We built the company to a $350 million market cap, and we did very well. So when we exited that, we figured, oh, this is going to be easy, right? Let's just take a cannabis company public. Why not? Well, my advice today would be don't do it, right? Because it is really, really expensive to be public and to stay public. And, in the old days, when we were public with, let's say, GROWLIFE, which used to be called Phototron, right? Something great would happen. We would do something wonderful. Something in the news would happen, and we would attach ourselves to it, and we do a press release, right? And back then, press releases were very instrumental, in moving stock up or down. But the truth is those days are gone, right? And the way to success in the public market nowadays is companies need to show profitability. Not just revenue anymore. It's all about profitability, because lots of people churn revenue, but if you're not making any money, that means your shareholders aren't making any money either. And the truth is that vaporware or a really good idea, just isn't enough to start or even to run a publicly traded company. Investors are much more savvy now. Back in 2009, everybody was comparing, the new cannabis rush, like the dot-com rush that happened, in the 90s. But, lots of publicly traded companies were spawned, lots of money traded hands, but not a lot of money was made from the shareholders. Unless you got in and got out quickly, there wasn't a lot of money to be made. And unfortunately, the cannabis industry is overtaxed, it's overregulated, and it's very, very difficult to make a profit. And because of that, that's what makes it way more difficult for a publicly traded company to survive, because you really have to care for your shareholders, because they're the ones whose money you're spending, right? So, you really have to pay attention to them and their needs. And again, it's very, very difficult to capitalize and profit from the cannabis industry, even though the perception is we're just racking and stacking cash. And the truth is we're not. So.
Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, because, we know the cannabis industry is difficult. It's difficult to raise capital. You can't get traditional financing. Getting money from shareholders sounds like a great idea, but that's an expensive process. So it's almost like, six in one hand, half a dozen in the other. Like, what direction do you go? So do you have any other advice or ideas that you can give to cannabis operators who are trying to figure out some fundraising activities for their operation?
Sure.
They definitely aren't going to try to go public right away. But what are some practical steps to help them get some funding in this space?
Yeah, well, if you have a rich uncle, That's always a good idea, right?
I had a client say, oh, I guess I just need to get new friends, because I tell them, oh, everybody else gets friends
Right,
and family loans.
right, right. So if you don't have a rich uncle or a rich family member that you can just pick up the phone and say, hey, can I have $2 million? Then it's a grind. It really is. You really have to spend your time reaching out, talking, pitching. And then when you're all tired from doing that, you have to do it again, and then again, and then again, and then again, until you find, the person or group of people that you can align with that actually see your vision the way you see it. But, raising money is a full-time job. And unless you're doing it full time, you know, I always say if you treat something like a hobby, it'll pay you like a hobby. If you treat it like a business, it'll pay you like a business. Hobbies cost you money, where businesses are supposed to make you money, right? So it can't be your hobby going out and trying to raise money. It is a full-time job. It is a grind, like I mentioned, and you really have to just put yourself in front of as many people as possible. Now, it is a numbers game, but it's a specific numbers game, right? You have to go after a certain type of investor, an investor that likes a little riskier move, an investor that doesn't mind that cannabis is federally illegal, right? These are the best financial partners to have because they understand your vision, they understand the big picture, the big vision, right? And they understand the process, right? There's definitely regulatory challenges, as we've spoken about. There's banking limitations, right? So the savvy cannabis investor understands all of that because they've been investing in the cannabis space, whether they made money or they didn't. They know that it's a difficult process, and because the processes and the regulatory limitations are very high, right? Pardon the pun. It's very important to find the right guy, right? I would also say you don't want to take anybody's money. Sometimes people are so desperate for money that they'll take anybody's money. They'll make themselves a bad deal, right? Because they get frustrated. I would say hold out. Don't make a bad deal, because lots of bad deals are out there, right? And the good deals are far and few between. But what you really have to do is be diligent about presenting and pitching, and don't be afraid to ask for the money.
Right, absolutely. I know, people can go back and forth to the same competitions for years and before they finally get their break.
Yeah.
And another important aspect is to have some type of unique value proposition.
Sure.
What are you actually bringing to the table that's going to add value to that investor? What types of things? Sure. Yeah. So I guess what types of things do you look at? Like, what types of key metrics or unique value propositions do you look at to kind of eyeball or see if a cannabis venture might be a good opportunity or a bad opportunity?
Right. First, I'll say that, the investor, they bet on one of two things, right? They bet on the jockey or they bet on the horse. So they either really fall in love with the executives and the founders and the people who are starting the business, or they're not so worried about those guys and they really love the idea, right? So when you have good founders with a great idea, then you have a win-win. And honestly, what most investors look for, but what I look for is the potential for profit and the potential for happiness, right? I mean, success can be defined in many different ways. And a lot of people associate money with it. And don't get me wrong, money's nice, right? And it's it's a necessary, commodity that we need to run our lives. So the potential for profit is definitely something to look at, right? But something that'll keep you happy, something that will get you out of bed and going to work every day, even on the bad days when things aren't so great, or you don't have the money to do and you have to get up and you have to grind it anyway. As I was saying before, the way that traditional companies differ from the pubcos is that you have all these shareholders to think about, right? So these are the folks that trusted you and bought into your vision and bought into your idea. And, this is the money that funds your operation. So the real success and the real potential is do you have the capability of making your investors money? Because if you do, then it's a win. If it's something that people aren't going to get, takes too much of an explanation, it's something that's never happened before, it's much more difficult because the messaging has to happen first, and then the company has to start. So, you hear about the sizzle and the steak. At first you got to sell the sizzle, and then you got to hope the steak isn't too tough to eat, right? You really have to look for something with sizzle and steak in order to really operate a successful pubco.
Yeah, got it. Okay. Awesome. And if anybody in the audience has any questions, please feel free to drop them in the chat. So let's talk a little bit about, your experience as host of the National Marijuana News. You've interviewed hundreds of cannabis leaders. And what are some of the most valuable pieces of financial advice that you've gleaned from these conversations?
Sure. Yeah, I have. I've interviewed hundreds of folks, and most people have a really unique but similar story about how they got into the cannabis space. Lots of folks had their experience with cannabis. A family member was cured, or they were cured, or a friend, or something like that, and it really spawned their passion to get into the cannabis space. The advice that I've learned from a lot of these folks is to always raise more money than you need. Right? Because as I mentioned earlier, everything costs twice as much. It takes twice as long. So you need the operating capital in order to survive and in order to make it, right? And when you raise that money, you can't be afraid to spend it. You have to be able to spend the money when you need to. Don't waste it, right? But don't be afraid to spend it. You have to spend the money to buy the new things that you need to operate your business, and spend it smart. Buy the newer widgets, not the older widgets, because you have to be able to adapt. You have to be able to grow, as your business grows. So I would always say, don't nickel and dime yourself. If you've raised the money, go spend the money, build your business, and never step over dollars to pick up pennies.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Oh, we do have a comment. Do you have any updates on the Schedule 3 approval?
That's an interesting question, because I do another podcast, and my story today was on the Nevada Supreme Court just denied the movement of cannabis from Schedule 1 to Schedule 3, even though it's a legal state, both medicinally and recreational here in Nevada. What moving it to Schedule 3 does is it gives the pharmacies the ability to sell cannabis. And federally, that's also what will happen. So it's not really the greatest move in the world to change the scheduling from cannabis or from Schedule 1 to Schedule 3. The real move is to deschedule it altogether, right? Take it off any kind of scheduling list and just let it be the commodity that it is. Because it's a very unique product. There's very few products in the world that are a glass of wine to some people and morphine to another person, right? Mm-hmm. So it's a very unique product in that it has different applications for different people, and to regulate it from a scheduled governmental perspective is just not the way to go. The fact that it's currently in the same schedule as heroin is just laughable, right? And, there are story after story after story after story about kids, adults, and people with some kind of debilitating disease, whether it's Parkinson's or cancer or lots of other things in between, that cannabis has helped, right? Mm-hmm. So the fact that people say, and government says, that it's not medicinally viable and it has the potential for addiction and no medical benefits is just wrong. It's just incorrect. It's just bad. It's not even facts. It's somebody's opinion. And it's usually a moral opinion, because cannabis has such a bad rap and has been such a bad marketing. It has bad marketing for the last 100 years, right? Now you have to overcome that. Oh, it's a dangerous drug. It's a gateway drug. It's a devil's lettuce and all of the other stuff. You have to get over that in order to create that marketplace too. So Switching from Schedule 1 to Schedule 3 is not really the greatest move because it changes the industry completely. The operators that have put their blood, sweat, and tears into it, and for the last 10 or 15 years, everything changes. So descheduling is the real way to go. But honestly, with the state of our political systems right now, I think it's a lot of gaslighting on both sides that say that they want to deschedule. I think that it could change America. I think that growing hemp instead of corn can change American infrastructure, as well as make us an industrial revolution again. But again, there's no indication that the scheduling will happen anytime soon.
Yeah, and I'm with you there, because it almost feels like because rescheduling is the only thing that's really on the table. I don't even think they'll entertain
descheduling. Right. That's what has to happen.
Yeah, I don't think the government's going to even entertain that at this point. But if they do, move forward with the rescheduling, it's almost like they have to create a whole new schedule, or they have to refigure the rules for Schedule 3, or
that's right, because it doesn't fit. Yeah, it just doesn't fit the cannabis industry.
Yeah, there's so many unknowns. All right, let's get into this Smuggleverse and smuggling cannabis into the metaverse, which I would love for you to break that down. So the Smuggleverse is described as the first digital dispensary of the metaverse. So can you explain this concept and its significance in the evolving cannabis landscape?
Sure. So we created the Smuggleverse because, I have the rights to my cousin's movie. We talked about several of the first publicly traded companies that were around back in 2009. Well, my cousin, his name is Bruce Perlowin, and he ran Medical Marijuana Inc. Again, one of the first publicly traded marijuana companies. Well, Bruce is quite infamous because from 1978 to 1982, he smuggled in about $1 billion worth of cannabis from Colombia right into the San Francisco harbor, right under the Golden Gate Bridge. He did it peacefully, without any violence. And honestly, it was the first time that the FBI, the Coast Guard, and the DEA worked together in order to find this operation that was happening in California. So my partner and I have the rights to Bruce's story. And we have been developing a movie version of his story for a few years now. And as we were pitching this movie, we went to a big producer in California. And he said, wow, this is really great IP. Why don't we take it to another step and bring it into the metaverse as well? So we thought, wow, that's a really great idea, because this is a couple of years ago when, NFTs were the big thing. And, even Facebook changed their name to Meta. Everything was pointing to the metaverse. So we created a digital dispensary. And, we created our story that while Bruce was in prison, he connected with his digital counterpart in the digital world called SmuggleBot. And together they figured out a way how to smuggle digital cannabis into the metaverse, because guess what? Your avatars need to get high too, right? So that's where the idea came from and spawned from. And now we've developed it out into a Web3 game. So now we're building a Web3 game where it'll allow you to smuggle cannabis from all around the world into your home base, wherever that might be, right? And you get to really run from the cops, run from the pirates, and outmaneuver the other smugglers, while avoiding getting caught or getting robbed, right? So, you can become a kingpin simply by acquiring all of the cannabis that is out there. And honestly, if you can succeed in the game by outmaneuvering your competition, well, maybe you can do that in business too, right? Just like the TV show Survivor, right? You have to outwit, outsmart, and outlast the competition. So we thought, what a great idea to do that with cannabis. in the metaverse?
I've got so many thoughts going through my head right now. You become a kingpin, you become perfect, and then maybe let's apply this to real life.
Yeah, of course.
Like a training ground.
100%. You know, look, the gaming market is a $350 billion industry right now. And the cannabis industry is about, a $250 billion industry. That's over $500 billion, when you combine those industries. And, that's $500 billion is more money than you could count in 5 lifetimes, right? So if you can get a little piece of $500 billion, it tends to be a big number.
And so it's just all a game. Like you're not actually making any money or anything through this.
It's all a game. Yeah, it's all a game that does have rewards. That's right. So NFTs are not, they're not really investments. They're products. They're digital products that offer rewards. They have value based on supply and demand, but they're not designed, sold, or marketed in any way for people to make money, but to participate in the gaming community. And participating in the gaming community can be very profitable. There's a lot of play to earn games, right? So if you do latch on to a play to earn game, the more you play, the more you earn, whether you're getting it in digital currency, in NFTs, or whatever. So there definitely is a way to profit, right, in the Web3 game space, with play to earn games.
Interesting. And then how does it work? Like, is it a global thing? Like if I play it and I mastered it and I became the kingpin, does like somebody in China have to outsmart me in order to get that title, or can a bunch of people have that title?
Yeah, that's a good question. So we created our first strain using Bruce as our celebrity, right? So basically we have different strains that we tie to celebrities or brands, right? So if you're a celebrity or a brand and you want to come out with your own digital assets, we create them for you. And we only create 20 pounds of each strain. So once the 20 pounds is gone, then it's gone. That's what drives up the value of these particular NFTs, is that once you own them all, well, guess what? If I want one of yours, I have to buy it from you, right? Mm-hmm. And the same thing with other kingpins. So as we launch new celebrities and new brands, then a new 20 pounds will be created. And then there'll be the ability to combine your strain with somebody else's strain, because there are also digital seeds involved. And now you have a one of one instead of a one of many, right? So the more that are out there specific to certain celebrities, the more value it becomes. And yes, somebody in China can take your kingpinness, right? If they outmaneuver and outsmart you, for sure.
And can they just come and shoot my meta character and take my stuff, or and then
not
what happens? Am I gone?
Yeah. Not quite that simple. There are several things that they would have to accomplish and unlock, and so on and so forth in order to do that. But there's always someone bigger, badder, stronger, faster, right?
Got it. Okay. Interesting. Wow. Okay. Now, do you see these digital assets impacting the traditional cannabis business in any way?
I do. I do, because if, it's a way to promote your brand internationally, right? Because right now you can't cross state lines to market your product, right? Even though California and Nevada are right next to each other and have a border and both have legal cannabis industries, there's no interstate commerce, right? Because it's federally legal. What having a digital asset allows you to do is there's no limitation to the digital world from a marketing standpoint, from a branding standpoint, and even from a reward standpoint, right? So brands can now market their product digitally to these gamers, to these folks online that are looking for the new, the best, the latest, the greatest, right? And now when they do show up in a legal territory, whether it's a country or a state here in the US, now they're familiar with this brand. Now they're familiar with the celebrity who has launched this digital product, and we also license out that ability to use that name of the cannabis for real world cannabis. So yes, it can impact the cannabis business, the real world cannabis business, should I say, by simply branding, marketing, and name recognition.
And so, is this game still in development, or is it like already running?
No, it's not. It's not ready yet. It takes a minute to put a digital game together, and in fact, we're even raising some more money to get it done.
Nice. What do you have, like a ETA, or what are you guys?
I think we're 9 months to a year away.
Got it. Interesting. I can't wait for that to come out. SMUGGLEVERSE. Okay.
You can check it out at SMUGGLEVERSE.com.
SMUGGLEVERSE.com. Awesome. Okay. So we talked a little bit about this. What potential risk and rewards of pioneering this unique, from an entrepreneurial perspective, what are the potential risk and rewards of pioneering this unique digital space? How might the idea of becoming a metaverse cannabis kingpin translate into real world business opportunities or challenges? That's kind of what we've covered. Yeah.
We spoke about that a little bit, but as far as pioneering, look, the pioneers have the arrows in the back, right? So if you're willing to take the arrows and you're willing to outlast and outsmart, then you can survive, and it's not always great to be a pioneer. It's not always, sunshine and roses, right? You have to really develop things out. You have to really do your due diligence. You have to have a strong legal team, especially when you're doing things that have never been done before, right? So, it takes diligence. It takes commitment and diligence. And, how it translates is, look, success is success, right? If we can tap into that $1 trillion marketplace, then it's a big win.
Awesome. Yeah. I'm just dropping the link in here for anybody who wants to check it out. All right. And so we have already approached our last question.
Right.
So this one's a fun one. So if you can create an NFT representing your career journey, what would it look like and how would you value it?
That's a really good question. So I've had a very strange and fun career as an adult. I went from a radio disc jockey to the television industry, where I worked for, big companies like Dick Clark Productions in the 80s. Then I was a casting director at Nickelodeon, right, which was in the 90s, which was way fun, lots of fun. And then I became a producer at a advertising agency, and I made thousands of commercials. And strangely enough, I spent 4 years producing shows for Playboy TV and Playboy Home Video. I did lots of music videos also in the 90s. And then in 1999, I directed a film for the opening ceremonies of the Sydney Olympics. Then I went into the technology world, as we talked about earlier. And honestly, from the technology world, I went into the cannabis space and have been there for the last, almost 14, 15 years. So maybe my NFT should be me on a beach somewhere, smoking a joint and relaxing, because I'm tired. I always say that he who dies with the best stories wins. So I do have some pretty good stories, and I'm not really sure how the market would value them, but I think they're valuable, and I think I have some good stories, so I might win.
Okay, awesome. Well, thank you so much. If there are any questions, let us know in the chat. If not, we are going to end this here. And thank you so much for being here. Let's see.
Yeah, quick shout out to Frank McMillan, who is an old business colleague of mine who's logged in. Frank, hope you're doing well.
Yeah, awesome. Saw Frank over here. All right, cool. So it doesn't look like, okay, yep, people are just saying thank you. So it doesn't look like there's any questions. So we are going to let you go here, but thank you so much for being here. It's such an interesting concept. If anybody is interested in being the next Meta Kingpin, follow the SMUGGLEVERSE.com and for their release. I think that it's more, I'm excited about it because it feels like it's more of a mind game, trying to figure how to outsmart everybody else in the game.
No, 100%. You know, think of Mario Brothers on steroids, right? Or think of Grand Theft Auto, but in the smuggling world, because that's really what we're modeling after. Because after their success, you know, how could you go wrong? But yeah, Grand Theft Auto in the smuggling world with boats and planes instead of really fast cars.
Interesting. And is it a different world, or is it the actual United States that you're trying to navigate?
Yes.
When you're smuggling? Okay.
It is. It's a different world. Yes.
It's a whole different world. Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you. You have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you for being here today.
I will give it a shot. Thanks for having me. And, you can check out Digipath Labs at digipath.labs.com. Check out the National Marijuana News at TNMNews.com. And, of course, SMUGGLEVERSE at SMUGGLEVERSE.com. Thank you, everybody.
Awesome. Thank you. Bye.
Thanks, Tyler. Bye-bye.